Hey folks, how you doing? Nick Jennison. It is the Monday Guitar Show. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. Today, we are discussing how to sound amazing on the old acoustic guitar. Now, this is backed by popular demand because we did a stream to this effect a few weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date that we did it. A few weeks ago, we did a stream on how to sound fantastic on the acoustic, where we focused our attention primarily on the technical aspects of playing your acoustic guitar, such as how to make things ring out cleanly, how to not dampen the tone of the guitar, all of the mechanical side of playing. There were lots of requests for us to focus on the musical side of playing, the dynamics, the chord voicings, all of that sort of thing. That is what today's stream is all about. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you on board. If you are a new viewer, hi, thanks for coming. We talk about all things guitar related on Monday evenings. We do it every Monday, 8 p.m. UK time. It says so down here. Look, that's my name right there. Nick Jennison, the Monday Guitar Show. We do this every Monday. Excuse me one moment. Got a plain cough. I am in fact back from a little jaunt in the northeast of France, playing Chords of Chaos Festival in Brittany, in the fantastic little town of Plouzavet. It was fabulous. I'll tell you all about that a little bit later on, but I'm kind of heavy metal out for the time being, so it's nice to be talking about the acoustic thing today. So if you're a new viewer, hey, welcome on board. It's great to have you. We do this every Monday. We've got a lovely little community that's growing here every week. It's great to see so many guitar players coming in and helping each other out with the act of getting better at playing the guitar. And of course, if you're one of our regular streamers who is here week after week, it's lovely to have you back. It would be very lonely without you. I think we say this every week, but it would just be me yelling into a camera. And that's not unusual, to be honest. That's kind of my day job. But this is my favorite kind of me yelling into a camera because the camera yells back, so to speak. So it's lovely for me to actually be talking to a camera and have a person on the other end, as opposed to just some footage that poor James is going to have to contend with at a later date. So anyway, before we get too deep into the meat of today's session, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, if you haven't done so already, give this video a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. I'll say that again, put my teeth back in. Give us a subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be watching on, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook. We are live on both the Lick Library and Guitar Interactive YouTube channels. If you're subbed to one and not both, go give the other one a sub because we put great stuff out on both channels all of the time. Go to licklibrary.com for all of your educational needs, Guitar Interactive magazine.com for interviews, news, reviews, gear, all of the other side of guitar playing. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's say some hellos and then we'll get stuck into the meat of today's session. First things first, PJ is in the house, says, hello, I must be the first in here, as there appears to be an echo. Hi Nick, I sound amazing on my acoustic when I give it to someone else. Well, fingers crossed, man, we're going to fix that for you today. We're going to see if we can't make you, or at least equip you with some ideas that you can use to sound your absolute best when you pick your acoustic up. It's kind of a weird thing, to be completely honest, to sit and play the acoustic in front to somebody as opposed to sitting and playing your electric, you know, when you're up there without all the assistance, so to speak. There's a pun that I'll tell you about in a second, or I guess kind of a comedy link. We'll get to that in a minute. But when you're, confronted with the idea of just playing something cool on an acoustic guitar, it can be quite challenging to know what to play. So hopefully we're going to go some way towards answering that today, at least giving you some idea of the sort of thing that you might like to play. Things that sound nice. So we're going to get to that. But yeah, man, it's a strange thing, especially if you're primarily an electric player and you're used to being able just to lay in with single notes and play some cool solo lines, some big chords. The acoustic is kind of a different beast, as I'm sure you are aware. So we've got a few folks asking if we're live. We are in fact live today. The tour, it's not really tour so much, it was just a weekend jaunt. We were away playing festival. I have the commemorative cup, so to speak. It's a cup. It was a great festival, super cool. But we are live. This is live. This is not a pre-recorded stream. We are in fact live. Response Audio is in the house. Says, hi Nick, hi guys. Hope you're having a great Monday. It's been pretty good so far, man. It's been sunny. Been playing my guitar. Been learning a set for a project that I'm doing over the next 2 months, which involves essentially bringing music into schools. Not so much teaching, but just kind of showing, bringing a really cool live band of pro musicians into schools and showing kids, hey, look, music exists. You can do this if you want. You probably will want to because it's great. It's a very cool project. It'll be the third year I've been involved in it. And I'm busy learning a bunch of songs today. And I did that in my garden because it was lovely. Larry Warren is in the house, says, hey, Nick, hey, guys, how's the tour going? Well, the tour has gone, but it was great, man. Really cool. For those who are asking, it was a fabulous heavy metal festival in Brittany, in the town of Plusavet. Gotta say, really impressed with not just the festival and all the bands that are involved, but how lovely the Breton people are. Like, the friendliest folks that I have met, probably outside of the northeast of England. We're renowned for being friendly, but let me tell you, man, like, the good folks of Brittany, really lovely, right? Great. So fantastic time. It's been killer. Marcin says, hi all, what's up? Hi Marcin, it's good to have you back on board. It would not be a stream if Marcin wasn't here. A regular viewer. It's always lovely to see you. Who else do we have? Cranky Tom is in the house, says, greets from a road trip. A regular traveller is our friend Cranky Tom. We love to see it. Tuning in from all over the world. Let us know whereabouts in the world you're watching from. So he's going to catch the stream up later. But yeah, man, let us know whereabouts in the world you are. We'd love to keep on top of your travels. Who else do we have? Mark Crandall is asking the question if it'd be live. It is indeed live. Yes, absolutely. Even if I was on tour, I'd find a way to do it. I'd do it from the hotel room or something like that. Steve McD is in the house. Says, hi all. Found the first part really useful. Looking forward to sounding even more amazing. Well, man, fingers crossed. We're gonna get you there. Timothy Appling is in the house. Says, hi Nick and fellow guitarists. Made it home from Miami just in time to jam with Nick. Well, man, I'm glad that you did. Chris Brown is back. Hey, get on. Says, hey Nick, hey guys, I'm back. This is the first one I've been able to catch since the rebrand. He's of course referring to our previous set of streams that we did for a couple of years over on the Guitar Interactive channel. We are now of course live on both channels under the header of the Monday Guitar Show. Makes me happy. Helmet Strap is in the house. Says, hey all, looking forward to tonight. Missed most of last week's live. Pesky internet connection. Well man, don't forget you can always catch it on the replay. Gotta say, by the way, those of you who watched last week's stream on what's in your gig bag, it worked a treat. The whole packing, all the stuff that I packed was great. It's really good. So yeah, everything was totally painless. Guitar arrived in exactly the condition that I left it in, which is good. It's always a panic when your guitar has to go under an airplane, but no, it worked an absolute treat. Didn't have to use the CRE in the end, which is a shame because it's a great guitar, but I played it in my hotel room. It's an opportunity to get warmed up, all that sort of thing. Really cool, very nice. Who else do we have? Mark Crandall says, if you didn't get the chance to watch Danny Gill's live stream from last Tuesday, you should check it out. It was really fun. Danny's great, and again does all these live streams for us fairly regular as well, as does Sam Bell. So don't forget, it's not just the Monday Guitar Show on the Lick Library YouTube channel. You can catch live streams from all of our tutors pretty regularly. It's not a set day every week, but we do regular live streams, so keep your eyes peeled. Make sure you've got the bell icon selected, so when you subscribe, so we can notify you when we're about to go live. Kim is in the house. Kim, I'm going to see you in 2 days' time when we're down in the studio, assuming you're somewhere, assuming you're at home and not somewhere warm. Timothy Appling is in the house. Says, got my Marshall SC212 cabinet to go with my Marshall SC20H. Snap. Where are we going? Down here. Marshall SC20H. Very cool head. A lot lighter than my 100 watt tube head and 4x12 cabinet. My headrest modeler and cabinet sounds good, but not like a tube. We'll talk about that later on, because that's an interesting observation. We'll talk about that as we go. Who else do we have? A very cool recommendation from my friend Helmet Strap, saying Jorge, I'm going to assume it's Jorge Rabe, I'm going to guess. I butcher people's names. I'm terrible at names. Says he plays a nylon string acoustic in an almost flamenco right hand, but covers Babe Ruth, Status Quo, Bachman Turner Overdrive, etc. Really cool. Sounds really cool. I'm going to go check that out. We have our nylon lurking in the corner up here. If you haven't checked out nylon string, you should do it. They're great. We're going to stick on the steel string today, but It's great. We've got a question from our friend Miguel saying, how do you get that sound? I will address that as we go, because it's actually surprisingly simple. I'll show you the settings as we go, but this guitar sounds pretty nice. Our friend Rob Van de Velde says, nice chord progression. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We are going to get onto that over the course of today. Our friend Cy Martin is saying, any tips on how to find chords in a key easily? Yes, we're going to get to that later on as well. If you have questions, by the way, don't forget you can drop the questions down below. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, drop us a comment, because we'll answer them as we go on. So if you've got questions, don't forget, drop them down below in the comments. In the meantime, I want to take a quick second to show you this. This is a convenient comment from our friend PJ. Is saying he's currently working through rock classics for Acoustic with John Connon. Definitely worth some time. Well, you can check that out at the link down below. This is a new course from licklibrary.com, which is essentially arrangements of classic rock songs by none other than Digital John himself. Go check it out at the link down below once the stream is done. Here's a little preview. When we come back, we'll be talking about the meat of today's lesson, which is how you can sound better on the acoustic in terms of your vocabulary, in terms of your chord playing, chord progressions, all of the above.
How's it going, everyone? John Connon here for licklibrary.com, and welcome to this series of videos that's going to serve as an introduction to chord melody acoustic guitar playing. We're going to take a few classic rock tracks and adapt them for 6 strings on an acoustic guitar. And this is going to get you into the mindset of taking a chord sequence and a melody and applying them together and fitting them all onto the fretboard. And we're going to be basing this off the cage system, and I've done a few videos on this topic, and there are loads others on licklibrary.com where you can delve into the cage system and see how it essentially maps out the fretboard using C, A, G and D chord in all of their various major and minor forms. Each of these arrangements are going to be very simplistic because they're going to capture the essence of each track, so bear that in mind, and I'd recommend you to experiment with a few variations of your own to get other nuances across in the various vocal melodies, because we're only going to be covering a verse and chorus of each of the tracks, again just to capture the essence. So let's get into the first track.
So guys, you can check that out at licklibrary.com. There is a link down below. Lick Library members will get this included as part of the membership, along with just an unbelievable wealth of guitar lessons. You guys who are Lick Library members, you know this already. There are so many lessons up there. It's not even funny. Don't forget, by the way, we also offer one-to-one player support. So if you're stuck at any point as to what you should learn next, just drop us an email or drop us a live chat on the website. We would love to hear from you, and we'll help, man. If you're stuck with where to go, you want to know what to look at next, we'll help. And we also do one-to-one sessions with the beautiful and handsome Stuart Shields, who is always available to chat to you about all this sort of stuff. Anyway, on to the meat of today's session. So last time we talked about this, we discussed primarily the technical aspects of sounding better on acoustic. I'm going to do a quick recap of some of those today, just as kind of like a basic guideline for what we're talking about today. And we'll talk more about how you might do some more musical stuff today. So very quickly, some things that we looked at last time. We talked about the idea of left hand positioning. So left hand positioning is things like where we don't want to position our fingers super close to the fret. I'll turn the guitar back on, super close to the fret. And in fact, we want to be just a little behind the fret wire, so we don't risk rolling over the fret to make things sound super, super dull. We also talked about the idea of maneuvering your right hand to influence the tone of the guitar, trying to touch as little of the guitar's body as possible, so we don't have this dampening effect. We also talked about how you hold the guitar, how you might use the body, or rather your body, to support the guitar and stop it from falling over, as opposed to gripping the guitar, which will allow you to move freely across the instrument. There were some other points we talked about as well, but those are some of the main ones. I'm going to ask you to bear those in mind as we go forward today. So let's get stuck in with some ideas regarding chord progressions first of all. So first thing I want to talk to you about is including open strings in your chord voicings. Now there's a reason why when we play chord voicings, we tend to reach for, or chord progressions rather, we tend to reach for these good old-fashioned cowboy chords. And because they sound nice. Now let me talk to you about what's going on there very quickly. So the cowboy chords in question are what we might think of as our caged chords. So John Connon mentioned this in the intro to the Rock Classics for Acoustic Guitar course that we looked at just a second ago. Great course, you should definitely go and check that out. But the cage system revolves around the idea that we can essentially form chords in five basic shapes. We have a C shape, an A shape, a G shape, an E shape, and a D shape. Now we can take these and we can move them around and turn them into bar chords, which are very, very useful for playing chords that don't necessarily jive with open strings. But the question then becomes, how good do they sound? So for example, we'll find ways to make them sound good, trust me. But let's say, for example, we could take this G chord here, and we could also play a similar G chord here. We could play a similar G chord here. We could play a similar G chord here if we were so inclined. Yak, not the nicest G chord in the world. We could play one here. All manner of G chords. Now, as good as this chord is, this one just sounds better. And the question is why? Well, the reason being is this chord doesn't contain any open strings. This chord does. And open strings just sound nice on acoustic guitars, right? They just sound good. And as a result, I feel like we should try and leverage open strings in our chord playing as much as possible. Now, this doesn't mean that we should only play these open position chords. We can play chords all up and down the fretboard, but looking for open strings and opportunities to include open strings is to our benefit. So let's say, for example, we were playing this G chord here. And for everybody who's watching, this would be an example of an E-shaped bar chord on the 3rd fret. So what we might do with that is we might take an E chord and advance it up, including the open strings, 3 frets. So we go up 1 fret, up 2 frets, up 3 frets, and we also bring our first finger with us, so we'd get a bar across the 3rd fret, going from 3 to 5 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 3. Now there are lots of ways that we could turn this chord into something that contained more open strings. Let's go looking for them. So what we might begin with is we might begin by looking for notes that are within the chord that we could place on an open string. So our open strings are obviously E, A, D, G, B, and E up here. Now, 3 of these notes, specifically D, G, and B, are going to be in our G chord. So if we play our G chord like this, we could conceivably make either the B string, the D string, or the G string an open string. Let's maybe start by making the D string an open string. Now this is going to require a little bit of careful finger maneuvering, but let's say, for example, instead of playing this, where we play 3, 5, 5, 4, 3, maybe we play this instead. Maybe we play 3, 5, open, 4, 3. Now here I don't have enough fingers to catch my high E string, but that's okay. That's a very beautiful sounding chord. It has similar levels of resonance and openness to this chord down here as opposed to this chord, which, while it sounds nice, wouldn't be my first choice. Now, if we went a little step further with this, we could take a look at the idea of maybe playing these 2 notes and then our open strings on D, G, and B. Or we could play something akin to this, where we played maybe this chord. This is a really nice version of a G with an add 9 on top. Let me show you what's going on here. Now, there's a few ways I can play this. Here I'm using my thumb on the bass, but this is an example of a chord that sounds really, really pretty if we wanted to play a G somewhere around here. One more time, the chord might sound like this. A very bonny chord. as opposed to this common old garden barchord rather, easy for me to say. Let me show you what's going on there. So here what I'm playing is 3, I'm using my thumb to play this, 5, the open D string, the open G string, 3, and then 5. Now there are lots of ways we can finger this. We could play it like this. For me, I feel it's quite easy with my thumb in the bass. So wrapping my thumb over the top, I have 3, 5, 3, 3, 5, open, open, 3, 5. Now this is a really pretty sounding chord for a couple of reasons. First of all, it includes a couple of open strings. Open strings sustain really, really beautifully. They sustain for a long time and they sound nice in the process. It also gives me an opportunity to include some other notes that might decorate the chord a little bit more fully. So in this case, what I might do is I might include a 9, which is another little trick that we can do to make our chords sound prettier, is throwing a 9 into the mix. Now 9s are an interesting interval because we can almost always include a 9 with relative impunity, but we're going to get back to that a little bit later on when we talk more about chord types. That's an example of G chord including some open strings, but let's do some other chords. So for example, let's say we were going to play maybe a chord that doesn't necessarily include too many open strings, maybe a B minor. Let's say for example we were playing G, and then we have a B minor here, and then maybe an E minor. And then maybe C, add 9, D. I have a question for you guys, and I want to know from the comments, right? Are there any open strings that we could easily include in this B minor to make it sound more pretty? Let me know in the comments which open strings you think we could include in the B minor. Which strings can we play open and not have them clash? For example, we're probably not going to play the open A string. Pretty as that sounds, it sort of sounds like something else here. So one from my friend Miguel who's saying E, that's an interesting choice, you definitely could, but there are 2 in particular that I'm definitely looking for. We're probably not going to include G, for example, because that might sound a little bit catastrophic. Actually, it sounds really pretty, but it doesn't sound like B minor anymore. Here's a cool one from Mark Randall, says B string and E string. Chris Brown says open D, open E for the 11th. Larry Warren is saying B and D. You guys are getting the picture. So let's start putting some chords together that include these strings. We'll include the open E string, the B string, the D string, which is going to be our 3rd of our chord, and we'll maybe play the low E string to get our 5th. Sorry, our root rather. So we might get this. Now we could actually just play this, but it sounds a little bit like we're just missing some notes. Let me show you what's going on there. Oh, hang on, wait a minute. Let's get that Star Wars white back on. Sounds a bit of a mess. But what we could do is we could play this. So let's say, for example, we decided to play as our B minor, a B note here, miss off the A string, open D string, another D note, and the open B string. Maybe we include an F sharp on the A string. The 11th can sound pretty nice. But maybe we don't bother with that. That's a very lovely, rich, sonorous voicing for our B minor. So we might get that instead of this. Sounds pretty boring by comparison. To recap, the voicing we have here is 7, 9, open, 7, open. I'm going to miss off the E for now. We absolutely could play that E and have it sound pretty, but sometimes it's just going to sound like we've missed. Because we're so used to hearing this as the sound of strumming the open strings on a guitar that sometimes these 2 strings together can sound a bit clumsy, just sometimes. But let's say, for example, instead of playing this, maybe we get this instead. Now, it's not just these chords that we can use open strings with. We can do it with all manner of different chords and all manner of different keys. Some examples might be if we were playing A major. It's very common to play it here. You'll see me do this all the time. The chord in question here is an A, another A, a major third, the open B string for the 9th, and then the open E string for the 5th. That can be very pretty. I may play my E here. I may play my G somewhat, maybe like this. I might play my D like this. Or like this. With the 9th on top. You get the gist, including open strings in your chord progression or your chord choices. A very good choice. Now, another thing we can do with open strings is anytime we have an open string, we can conceivably play, we can do this on strings that aren't open too, but we can play natural harmonics and have them sound really lovely. So if, for example, I played a chord like this, that's going to sound really pretty. I could also play them as artificial harmonics. Really pretty, really lovely stuff. Now, you don't just have to play your harmonics and open strings, but harmonics and open strings ring out really nicely. But we can also include harmonics on pretty much any chord that we're playing. So, for example, the chord that I played at the end here, here's a fun little trick that I like to do. This particular chord is the Carole King chord, which you might think of as a D chord played over an E root. Sounds great in A. It's the 5 on an A progression. It's the You Got a Friend chord, if that makes sense. Or if you're a Golden Girls fan, it's the Thank You for Being a Friend chord, whatever. Either way, beautiful sounding chord. In this case, it's the easiest chord in the world. We bar 7, 7, 7, 7 across the middle few strings. There's a D chord. There's our E root. With my index finger, I'll show you this on these two cameras, I believe. Yeah, why not? I'll show you that there. Well, in fact, that doesn't make any sense. I'll show you it on these two cameras. That's probably the one. So, very quickly, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to strum. I'm also going to touch the the equivalent of the 7th fret, so the 19th fret, with my index finger, and by moving my arm like this, I'm going to touch each string as the pick hits it. And we get lovely artificial harmonics. So artificial harmonics are a great way to decorate a chord. Now, moving on very quickly, we talked about some chord construction ideas, and one thing we might talk about is the inclusion of 9s. Now, 9s are essentially the free real estate of the chord world, in that you can pretty much include a 9 in most chords. I say most, not every chord, but in most chords, certainly in pop and in rock and all that sort of thing. You can include a 9 in the chord and not have it really impact the chord's flavor or the chord's value too much. For example, if I play an A and I play an A major 7, the inclusion of the major 7 really influences the chord's it influences the chord's flavor, or the chord's value, let's say, in a way that playing a 9 kind of doesn't. Here's an A, here's an A add 9. Same is true for minor. A minor and A minor 7 have very different sounds. A minor sounds somber, A minor 7 sounds kind of cool and mysterious and like an expensive city at night, let's say, whereas A minor and A minor 9 they just sound like more, it sounds like a more expensive version of the A. Now, where do we find 9s, in case anybody's wondering about this? Well, very simple method for finding 9s. Whatever chord you're playing, take the note that is 2 semitones above that and play it. So, for example, if we played an F chord, like this, let's go to these cameras and I'll show you here, we could easily include a 9 in our F chord by playing a G note. So there's our F. We could play an F chord with the inclusion of a G on top to get a 9. We could also play it with the inclusion of a G somewhere in the middle by, would you look at that, including an open string. Very pretty sounding chord voicing. We can play them all over the place. We could play this F, play a G here, for that classic every breath you take. Take a deep breath because that is a very painful chord voicing to play, but you get the gist. We can include 9s in minor chords, we can include 9s in major chords, and they're basically just a cheap way of making chords sound really, really pretty. Bonus points if you can get the 9 or the 3rd on an open string. So if you can get a 9 like this, let's say for example D minor, where the 3rd is here on the 6th fret on the B string, and we can play the 9 on the open, in this case the open E string, that's got a really lovely kind of like wavering quality between the two notes. Same goes for this. D major with an open E string for the 9. Or for example, if we played C, where the E is the open, the E is the 3rd on an open string, and we play our 9 here on D on the 3rd fret of the B string. If you can put those next to each other, they sound really beautiful. Now, let's take for example a very simple chord progression, which might be something like, let's do it in the key of A. Let's do A, E, F sharp, and then you guessed it, D. The 4 chords of the apocalypse. Let's play them with some 9s included. So let's say we're going to play our A like this. Let's play our E here. Our F sharp could be this. And our D could be this. Or even here. It sounds really nice. Let's do before and after. Without 9s. Kind of dull. With the inclusion of our 9s. Oh, so pretty. Really, really lovely. Now, we can also do this on most chords in a rock or pop idiom. The places you can't do it, there's a handful of them. We don't include a 9 willy-nilly on the 5th, because sometimes we want the 5th to be something other than a straight 9 chord. It can be a bit weird sometimes if we play it as the James Brown 9. We also have to be careful playing a 9 on chord 3 in a major key. So if we're playing an A, C sharp, we'd have to be careful including a 9 because it would imply a brief movement to Lydian. Don't worry about why, another story for another day, but be careful about that. So for example, A major, E minor, F sharp minor, C sharp minor 9, a little strange. Sometimes we have to be a little careful with it on the 3 chord. The reason being, this 9 is no longer included in the major scale it'll playing from. Don't worry too much about that. That's something to just be a little bit aware of. Now, moving on to another subject. Another subject for sounding great on acoustic is the subject of voice leading, or the subject of playing melodies and chords simultaneously, or stacking chords in such a way that they sound like they flow neatly from one to another. Now, this is quite a complicated concept that John Connon does a great job of explaining, or at least explaining the first steps into learning this concept in the course linked down below, which is Rock Classics for Acoustic Guitar. It's a great course. I encourage you to go check it out. It's really, really cool. But I'm going to try and explain a little bit of it today and show you some methods that you might use to play some interesting stuff with voice leading. So, first things first is if we don't have a melody that we're trying to play, if we're just trying to play chords that sound nice together, we can use voice leading. Larry Warren's got a great one, says use your ear to guide you. Sure, 100%, totally agree. But when it comes to voice leading, probably a good way of thinking about it is trying to move as few points as possible. Let's say, as few points as you can possibly play. Here's a cool one from Cowcat, says, regarding helmet strap, the G chord on the D, so we've actually missed a point here. So this one from helmet strap, he's saying, I was taught to play open G without the D on the B string. I notice you include this note as many players I've seen now do. Is there a specific reason for the new voicing? Well, there is actually. So what he's referring to is the difference between this G and this G. For anybody who's missing that, I'll go here so we can see it on a smaller screen. This is what he's referring to. This is the E where G is classically taught. And this is the way most modern players will play G. The reason for this is somewhat selfishly, there's twofold. Cowcat's got a really great point. I think the main reason for this is that this G sounds really good with distortion and this G does not. So that sounds really rewarding if you go... you know, you get the idea. I'm not going to do the Brian Johnson voice. But yeah, that sounds pretty cool with distortion because we're prioritizing roots and fifths. So we're not playing the third quite so much, which can sound a little bit funny with distortion. Close group thirds, they can be a bit dissonant. But they sound great on acoustic. I think that's part of the reason. But Cowcat's got another really cool one, which is that the G chord with this D here, which ably demonstrates our point about voice leading, is cheap voice leading because we can keep this note static when we go from G to D to C add 9, which I even heard one guitar player refer to as GC. And I knew what he meant. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get you. That is GC. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not what it's called, but it's okay. I knew what you meant. So yeah, that's kind of two of the reasons, I guess. But going back to our voice leading, this really ably demonstrates the point that we're getting at here, which is trying to move as few parts in our progression as possible. Let me show you some examples of chord progressions that maybe aren't voice-led, and then some examples of ones that are. And there are some really pretty examples that I can show you here, such as the Foy Vance track that was playing in the intro. So this is a song called, Ziggy Look Me in the Eye, and it's a really beautiful song using lots of ninths and some great voice-led triads with ninths in them. Very cool song. But I'm going to show you a slightly more simple example. If we go back to our A, E, F sharp, D, chords of the apocalypse chord progression, if I play these without voice leading, we can play them jumping all over the place and get a slightly, well, maybe not the most graceful rendition of this, which might be something like this. And we've all done these. Now, there's nothing wrong with those chords. They sound fine, but we could play them much more elegantly. So an example of a voice-led version of these chords might be something like this. And this is without invoking open strings just yet. same chords, but what you'll probably notice when I'm doing this is they seem to flow one into another, and that's because I'm trying to move as few or as short of a distance as possible. Let me show you some examples of this. So let's take this A chord as our beginning, and let's look at some places that we could play E chords around this to create a voice leading, or at least a smooth transition, because it's not truly voice leading yet. Voice leading implies the presence of a melody, which we'll get to in a second. But let's see if we can find something that flows really smoothly from here to the equivalent of this. Now you could actually consider this as a voice-led version of A to E. Now what I'm doing there, just to show you very quickly on these two cameras, is I'm playing, let's just bring this guy back in, from the A in the bass up to this E note here, and then I'm playing from B in the bass to try and keep things from sounding too clumsy. But we could do that, but it's more luck than anything else. So what we might look for is we might look for chords that are close to the chord that we're already playing. Let's say, for example, I'm playing this A chord here using this E voicing. I might take my pinky finger and use it to maintain this E note to get to my E chord. And from here, I could play a chord using a C shape, which in this case is 7, 6, 4, 5, 4, to smoothly move from here to here, which sounds much more smooth than this. Nothing wrong with that, but this, just a little smoother. Now, if we combine that with the idea of including open strings, what we could do is we could play this. Where here, I've just left the top two strings open for a 9th and a 5th. I could keep those and get this. When it's time for the F sharp, I could do the same. Really beautiful chord. Notice how this has this lovely flow, almost like the chords are descending, just kind of like moving gently down, even though previously we had this jump down, step up kind of movement. Now, it is the subject of an entire course to show you how this stuff would go together in its kind of fullness, but just being aware of this can help level up your chord playing. Now, something else we can do with this is if we have a melody in mind, which is where voice leading really starts to come into its own. If we have a melody in mind, we can start to stack chords in such a way that the melody note is always on top. An example of this might be, now Connor Thomas is a fantastic version of this. This is the song Africa by Toto, but I have a particular version that I like to play just as an example of voice leading or melody leading with spread triads. So we did some streams on spread triads. They're a lovely way of voicing your triads. Using this for the Foy Vance song that we talked about in the intro. Foy Vance is superb, says Daryl Queen, can confirm. Love me some Foy Vance. But an example of this might be to take the melody, which might be this. Might be this. Bizarrely, I don't know this without the spread triads. I'm just thinking about this now and I'm like, how do I even play this? But what I might do is I might voice my chords. Oh. Now, if you guys are interested, we'll do a full lesson on how I play that particular arrangement of Africa. It's a really cool arrangement, but what I'm doing here is I'm taking the idea of a melody on the top of the chord and structuring the chords and choosing my chord voicings in such a way that the melody is always the top note. Now, you don't have to do this with complicated voicings, and you don't even have to do it with a predetermined melody. You can just create a melody of your own invention through pretty much any chord progression. So if we go back to that idea of the 4 chords of the apocalypse, we could get a melody that might run something like this. Let's go. Now that's just making up something off the top of my head, but there's a clear melody that's moving through those chords, and you can kind of hang whatever voicing of the chord you want from that melody on the top, and having just a little thread that runs through the chord progression like that can be pretty huge for this. Here's a cool one from Chris Brown saying, I recently transcribed Martin Miller's Between You and Me, which is a similar chord melody idea. Sure, right? That's a really great example. And there are lots of examples that you might take from jazz guitar players who will play this sort of thing on the regular, where there's a little bit of voice, well, there's a lot of voice leading in the way they're playing the chords because they're trying to support a melody or even just outline a melody in a solo jazz piece, let's say. It's a great place to look. Here's a cool one from Daryl Queen. Says, this is a game changer practice, as mapping out a solo chord melody piece will also unlock note recognition on the fretboard. For sure, 100%. Now, I have been doing a bit of this on the electric as well recently, over the last few years. I've got a little trio that I've been putting together. I put together a little while ago. And we basically, the idea is that we take on songs that shouldn't be done with trios and just like find ways to make it work. So one of them is we do a version of Bruce Hornsby in the Range, The Way It Is. And I have this. That's quite tough on acoustic. All that sort of business. It's a very, very cool way of kind of like finding these voicings and playing something pretty on the top. So there's the melody. I know that I want an A minor. I want an E minor with a B on the top. I want a D with an A on top. A C with a G on top. I want B in the middle. Again on a G chord. I want B going to C. And then I want a C sus with this note on top. I had the melody to begin with. Really good fun. Now there's lots of other things that we do in there which are kind of good fun, like we do a version of, maybe we'll do some lessons on this stuff, who knows. Maybe we'll talk about how you can kind of create some, I guess some arrangements for your electric guitar or one acoustic guitar in a trio that maybe sound a little bit more pianistic, and maybe would be great if you were going to sing along, let's say, which is kind of what I'm doing. So maybe we'll do some of that too. Daryl Queen saying, nice, we need videos of this trio on your IG account, please. There is a video of me doing The Way It Is. I'm going to dig that back out. That's one of the ones that we do fairly regular. Although I think it's slipped out of rotation, but it's a cool song. Suffice to say, we do the full Eric Johnson trip. So the intro, I've got this, I'm kind of waffling on a bit now, but I've got this really cool, and then the bass goes, boo, 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 and the bass goes, boo, doo, 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 doo. Really cool. And then, you know, big solos, you get the gist of it. So maybe we'll do some stuff like that, but Africa is an example of something we did there. Also, probably the hardest solo I've ever had to learn my entire life. Blimey. That's tough. One more time. I have to practice that before every gig. It's really, really tough. So maybe we'll have a little bit of that. But guys, we're running shy of time, but I want to do a little quick recap on this one. So some ways that you can sound more amazing in the acoustic is the following. Here's, I guess, a few principal points here. Prioritize open strings. So when you're playing chords, when you're playing whatever, if you're playing something to drone over, prioritize open strings because they sustain really beautifully. Think about including some harmonics. Harmonics are always pretty. Prioritize open strings. Include the ninth in your chords because it's basically free. Doesn't really affect anything. It just sounds pretty. Find ways to include ninths. All is well. Last but not least is to explore voice leading, explore moving smoothly from one chord to another, or having a melody thread that runs all the way through your chord progression. If you do those 4 things, I can promise you, you will level up your acoustic guitar playing immeasurably, and it will also have a knock-on effect to your electric guitar playing too. So we're going to move on to some questions because we've got a little bit of time left. Let's get on to the good old-fashioned Q&A because there's a few that I want to address. Specifically, I want to talk about the tone. So we've got a few comments about the tone. I'm going to see if I can show this to you very quickly. So give me a quick minute. I'm going to grab my phone. We're going to throw Filmic Pro on and I'll show you what I'm plugged into here because this is a bit of fun. Now, in terms of the guitar's tone, this is something Larry Warren's asking about, and also our friend Miguel's asking how we're getting this sound. I am plugged into this guy here. Let me just quickly grab the app because I can show it to you properly if I do it like this. Let's do Filmic Pro, blah, 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 blah. Not a plug, definitely not sponsored. So we are plugged into this guy right here. This is a Boss Gigcaster Pro. Now, this is what we use for the audio on our streams. You can see my voice going on in there. You can see the guitar going here. I'm literally plugged directly into the front of it. So there's the guitar. There is my my thumb to prove that it's real. Hey, there we go. So you can see the guitar going on here. In terms of the effects, we've got a little bit of, let me just show you on the channel. So the screen is quite well tucked away here, but hopefully be able to see a little bit of what's going on. We have some EQ. I've notched out quite a lot of 800 hertz and quite a lot of 2.5K with a reasonably broad Q. It's a Q of 2, so I think that's about half an octave of Q. We're also rolling off the top end at 8K. So the 8K top end roll off is taking a little bit of harshness out. And we also have a little bit of EQ there. I've also got a bit of compression going on. I'm going to go back to me. Let's get rid of that camera there. That can stay there. You can live here for the time being. So yeah, that's what I'm plugged into. We're using a plate reverb, I believe. But one of the big things that's making this sound so nice is this guitar, which is a Cort Flow OC. It's got an LR Baggs Anthem, which has a mic pickup blend. So now I can't hear this, so I dialed this in. I'm just playing this opening the room. So if I do this, we should hear more of the pickup. If I go in this direction, you should hear more of the mic. The mic really helps in this instance. It just sounds a bit more real, whereas the pickup sounds a bit more punchy. Now, somewhere betwixt the two is the truth. For me, I always lean a little bit more towards the mic. Interestingly, speaking to Connor Thomas about this, who has beautiful plugged-in tone, of course he does, because he's a fabulous player, he does the opposite, but his pickup system is different to this. He has a proprietary pickup system that he's been working on for a while with the guys over at Sam McLaren Guitars. He tends to favour the piezo, I tend to favour the mic on this system. But it varies from system to system. I just feel like the mic sounds a bit more real in the room. But yeah, that's basically it. A little bit of EQ. I find finding those really obnoxious frequencies and pulling them out is kind of the answer here. So if you remember last week on a stream, we talked a bit about IRs, and we talked about EQing IRs. So specifically, I don't cut high end on IRs. I don't do the high end like roll off thing. I prefer to notch frequencies that sound a bit off because I want the high end. Bizarrely, on the acoustic, we are rolling off high end. We're rolling off high end at 8K. And the reason for this is because that noise comes through too much. That's basically it. It still sounds nice. if we leave the 8K or we leave the high end in up into the stratosphere, but it's just a bit, the handling noise gets a bit too much. So yeah, that's basically all we're doing for you guys who are asking about the tone. That is basically the whole deal. So we've got some more questions coming in. I am going to very quickly address this one. This is our friend Cy Martin, who's asking any tips for how to find chords in a key easily. For sure. So first thing I'm going to suggest is getting good at finding root notes. So finding root notes, I'm guessing, well, we can approach this a few different ways. So we can either approach this from the perspective of you have a key and you want to determine which chords are available. If that's the case, then that's a different thing entirely. But if you already have, say you have a chord progression you're trying to decode by ear, if you can figure out which of the chords is home, which one is the one chord, you're in good stead for figuring out the other chords in the key. So getting good at figuring out the one chord is really, really useful. And you might do this by playing each chord one at a time and seeing which one feels most restful. So for example, if we took the chords to Mr. Brightside, which is D, G, B minor, A, which is also the chords to Drives Me Crazy by the Fine Young Cannibals. With some voice leading. Same thing. But if we play each of these chords one at a time, if we play D, we could live there forever. If we play D, G, maybe, but feels like it wants to go somewhere. B minor, feels like it wants to go somewhere. This definitely feels like it wants to go somewhere. If you're unsure, play them a few times and then stop on each one once you have a flavour for the chord. We don't want to stop there. Probably don't want to stop there. We want to stop there. That's the idea. That's a good way of getting used to root notes. Once you have the root note, you can start to, or the root chord, you can then start to figure out which chords are in a key based upon your knowledge of music theory. So what you might do with this is, I mean, this is a bigger thing, so maybe we'll make a full stream on this, on decoding chords in a key. If this is something you guys are interested in, let me know, because maybe I'll do a full stream on this. It's a very good question, but I think starting with root notes is probably the way to go. So if you already have chords, a chord progression that you know, or you have chords in a song, you're trying to figure out which key it is, which one is the root note, getting good at finding that restful chord is very, very important. Another thing we can do with this, though, is we can just take a look at the notes that are in a given major scale. So, for example, if we're in a major chord, major key, we could take a look at the notes in D major, and we can attach a chord with a value to each one of those notes, and they're usually the same. There are some occasions where they're not, but they're usually the same. So if we take, for example, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, those being the notes of a D major scale. How do I know? Because I put my first finger on D and played a major scale. Not to be reductionist, but it's literally that. I can take each one of these notes, knowing that D is 1. I can give each one a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. Each chord gets its own value. 1, 4, and 5 are usually major. 1, 4, 5. 2, 3, and 6 are usually minor. 2, 3, 6. That sounds like a Killer's song, I'm sure. Anyway, so what we get is we get 1 being major, 2 being minor, 3 being minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is usually minor, 7 is usually half diminished, which we usually don't play. Certainly not in pop music. And if you're asking the question of how to find chords in a key easily, this chord is probably not one that you're looking for, let's say. Now, maybe it is. I don't want to make assumptions about this. And I also should point out that if you're asking this question, you absolutely should not be worried about the fact that you're at a point in your guitar playing where you have to ask this question. We're all there at some point, right? So, but what I'm saying with this is don't worry too much about that. Just acknowledging that 1, 4, and 5 are usually major, and 2, 3, and 6 are usually minor, is a good place to begin, because what we can do there is we can find the root note of a given chord, which in this case is 1, 4, 6, then 5, and just apply the appropriate value to them. 1 is usually major, 4 is usually major, 6 is usually minor. Oops. What's going on there? 6 is usually minor, 5 is usually major. 9 times out of 10, that's going to work. For minor keys, it's the same deal, but we just kind of give them different values. So if we took D minor, we could play a 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. In this case, 1 and 4 are usually minor. Something interesting happens if 4 is not minor. Usually minor. There's lots of major chords here. Usually, flat 3 is major, flat 6 is major, flat 7 is major. Weirdly, 5 is usually also major. It's actually usually dominant. But it can be major. So in minor, it's kind of interesting because most of the chords are major. But it's just one of those things. So 1 is usually minor, 4 is usually minor. So for a progression that goes 1, 4, 7, flat 6, we'd get minor, 4 minor. What do we get to? Flat 6 major, flat 7 major rather, flat 6 major. If we go to 5, it's usually major, just convention. 2 we haven't talked about. 2 is actually usually, bizarrely, flat 7. 2 is flat 7, it's just flat 7 turned upside down. It's another story for another day. So if you find this root note in the key of D minor, it's probably actually going to be a C chord, but just with an E in the bass. I realised that was a very, very quick blast over that idea, but I'm going to try and give you an overview of that. There's some tips, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the one. Here we go. Physiotherapy Education says, when we were young. That is the song. That is the song. Yeah. I'm certain that's the song. It might be another one. Who knows? Anyway, it's definitely a killer song. Guys, we've run clean out of time and then some. Our friend Colin O'Hare says, so much to do, so little time. You're the man. Very kind of you, man. I appreciate that. That's super kind. I don't know if I'm the man, but I like doing a lot in a little bit of time. That's all I will say, right? I love trying to cram as much into these lessons as we possibly can. So if it's a little bit rushed, don't worry, you can always catch it on the replay. And again, learning music theory is, as Mark Crandless rightly pointed out, needs to learn more theory. Music theory is not scary. Music theory is like, if you can add up, if you're American and you can add up sales tax in California, or you can calculate a tip, you can do music theory. Right? It's really not very complicated, I promise. For some reason, people want to make it complicated, and it's really not. And in fact, maybe we'll do a stream on theory. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point. Who knows? But for the time being, gonna play a little bit more on my acoustic because it's really pretty. We're back on the electrics next week. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Nick Jennison. This has been the Monday Guitar Show. Don't forget to check out the course linked down below, which is John Connon's Rock Classics for Acoustic Guitar. It's great. If you haven't done so already, give us a subscribe. We are currently live on the Lick Library and Guitar Interactive YouTube channels. Make sure you've got the bell icon selected on both of those channels so that we can let you know when we're about to go live, and when new videos drops, go to licklibrary.com for all of your lesson needs. Go to guitarinteractivemagazine.com for news, reviews, interviews, gear, all of the above good stuff. It's like a whole guitar holistic thing. It's lovely. Anyway, my name's Nick Jennison. I will see you next week. Check out the courses linked down below. Don't forget to share this with your guitar playing friends. I will see you guys next time. Let's play some more. my name is Nick Jennison, and it's my pleasure to announce that GI Plus, the exclusive lessons from Guitar Interactive magazine, are now included with your Lick Library membership. GI Plus features a whole host of the best players and educators in the world, bringing you exclusive lessons on everything from metal to blues to fusion and everything in between. Want to level up your shred chops? Check out How to Play Fast by Andy James. Or how about Sweep Picking with Rick Graham? Or maybe country's more your bag? Well, how about a full-length country guitar course from Andy Wood? Interested in learning how to play over changes? Well, members get access to hours of exclusive lessons from fusion maestro Tom Quayle. Or maybe you want your playing to sound more soulful. Well, who better than Chris Buck to show you how it's done? Members also get access to every lesson ever published in Guitar Interactive magazine, including Michael Caswell's legendary Pro Concepts column. Or maybe you want to learn the secrets of the masters. Well, members get access to over 70 full-length tech sessions where our tutors painstakingly decode the styles of players like David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Larry Carlton, Slash, Tosin Abasi, Paul Gilbert, and many more. And you get all of this in addition to all of the amazing content on licklibrary.com, which includes note-for-note tuition of over 60 classic albums, weekly lesson uploads, a backing track library, and one-to-one player support. There has never been a better time to sign up than right now.